I'm Francesco Loschiavo. I am the series creator of Tales from the Void, and I wrote and directed some of the episodes.
My name is John Thomas Kelley. I'm Francesco's co-showrunner on Tales from the Void, and I wrote and executive produced the episode, or some of the episodes, I should say. Yeah.
So, for those watching who might not know, what is Tales from the Void?
Tales from the Void is a horror anthology series based on viral stories from the Reddit No Sleep community. Reddit No Sleep, if you're not familiar with it, is one of the largest independent horror communities where people write and share kind of creepy stories online.
Tonally, it's a fucked up version of Goosebumps for adults. So,
yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Amazing. And both of you guys have worked in other formats as well, like short films and features and stuff as well. Mm-hmm. How does making an anthology series compare to working on, say, for example, a feature film?
It's way harder. I wish we did a feature film first instead of the anthology. We're not familiar with like block shooting, so we were doing shooting and prepping at the same time. So it would be like I would be directing an episode, John would be prepping the next directors for the next shoot. I would get off set, we would go check the setup for the next thing. So your head's kind of in two places at once, which makes things challenging. Also, I think show running it's a tricky one because like you want to be supportive of the directors and their vision, and you need to kind of like make sure you're not giving pedantic notes on everything, but at the same time you got to know when to put your foot down, because if everyone kind of runs rampant, especially with anthology, you don't have that like consistent through line in terms of tone. So it was a fun learning process, and I think I was fortunate to learn from some of the best, working with Joe Lynch and the Adams and Marie. I was very fortunate enough to watch them direct, then shoot an episode, watch them direct, and then shoot one. So I feel like I got better with every one. Picking up a lot from the directors as we went along.
Yeah, I think to Francesco's point, we anticipated it would be easier to do an anthology than like a larger budget feature film, and we were just aggressively wrong. And I think if we do it again, we got to figure out a way to do it where we don't lose our minds. So it was worth it. It was worth it, but that was the learning. Is that we were like, okay, we tried it this way. There's probably a better way to do the anthology that we'll put our heads together and figure out if we get to season 2. Yeah.
And another thing as well is, of all the festivals that I've been to, quite often I think seeing a block of TV episodes sort of screened almost as like a feature block, that's quite unique. I don't know if I've seen that before. How early on in the process did you kind of have the idea that you do this sort of tour where you tour around and show 3 of them?
It's been interesting because a lot of like festivals have tried to put us in their shorts programming, and we've kind of fought against that. And I think Grimmfest really got what we were trying to do here, because I don't think it's fair to be slotted with shorts, take up a slot that would be 3 10-minute shorts for one of our episodes of TV, and we've got maybe 10 times the budget as a short. So I think what was cool about Grimmfest is that, and all the festivals that programmed is they understood that like when you group them together, people get the show. Because it's an anthology, when you only show one, you might have an expectation of what the show is. I think it's at minimum 2, I think 3, once you get that. They're so very different, but there's kind of that consistent through line in tone. So yeah, we've tried to push for programming of at least 2 to 3 of the episodes to an hour and a half to get a full feel of it, and we've been really lucky that festivals have kind of been supportive of that.
And in terms of like strategy too, like so Francesco and I have worked in indie film for like a while now, so we're familiar with film, right? We're not exactly TV guys, and we kind of treated this less like a TV show and more like 6 independent movies that we were making. So it felt only natural to go the film festival route, especially when you have people like involved in the project like Joe Lynch, like John Adams and Toby Poser, who are both, they've played at a million festivals. Like our executive producers, Aaron Kuntz was involved. Like we've had Brad Miska. So like it's a lot of people who kind of get the indie film world. So it made sense for us to kind of, try to go the avenue of like, well, it's our version of an indie film,
Amazing. And one other question I had was, because a lot of our followers are filmmakers themselves, some of them they've made shorts, but they've not really made anything bigger than that. Some are producers, some are directors. What advice do you have for this kind of next generation of filmmakers who are maybe looking to make that next step and maybe make their first kind of bigger project?
I think it's interesting. Like, we're doing a talk at Film Quest about this exact subject. So I don't know what works for everyone. I can speak to what worked for us. But if you look at, like, you know, Southbound or, you know, Double X or what's the Halloween anthology one?
Holidays. Tales of Halloween.
Tales of Halloween, Holidays. Like, all of these are a bunch of great shorts that took 5 good filmmakers and unified around a theme. And I think any filmmaker can get together with their friends, group, you know, their shorts under a couple of parameters, and you have a feature, right? And that's a way to, like, I think, get a bigger budget or, like, step towards the next thing. To me, like, my journey as a director has been doing as many shorts and then doing this show until I feel comfortable to take on doing a feature. And I think it's similar for screenwriting, right?
Yeah.
Whereas it's like, you got to put the reps in, and you'll know when the work has gotten good enough that you're ready for the next step.
And from a production perspective, the best advice I can give would be, like, if I guess it depends on if you're trying to, like, do something with a larger budget or not. Like, not to say that our budget was large. It was large for us, but I think we talked to other people and they're like, oh my God, how did you do that? But I think, like, if you're trying to do something with, like, you know, essentially raising private money, like, you have to do the reps on the scripts. The scripts have to be incredible. You have to be incredibly prepared. I think Francesco had, like, a 60-page, like, you know, pitch deck with, like, images and marketing plans, and teaser trailers help. But I think the most important thing is there's no job too big or too small for you to do. And I think we've had conversations with other filmmakers. I think Francesco gets approached about producing other people's work from time to time. And, you know, you'll ask questions around, like, you know, well, what's, like, the, you know, what would be, like, let's scrutinize budget line items. Let's, you know, well, what would be, like, you know, I get, like, a character breakdown or something? And people will say, well, that's not my job. I'm the filmmaker. It's like, nah, like, if it's your project, everything's your job. Like,
And we do it all. I did accounting. We did,
I booked flights at one point.
We're doing social media stuff today.
Yeah.
Like, we do it all. We have a say in all of it. And I think, you know, in my opinion, if you're the 1% of, like, great directors, maybe you don't have to do all that stuff, and maybe you just make the best short ever and it all happens for you. That hasn't been our journey. It's been fight tooth and nail, and that's the way we've gotten stuff made, is not be above rolling our hands up and jumping in the blood pit if we need to for the shot or whatever has to be done.
Yeah, and we had an incredible crew that did awesome work. But, like, also, if there were sandbags and you'd be picked up and carried a mile, I picked up the sandbags and I carried them for a mile. So, yeah, you know.
I love that. It's really practical advice as well, because I've asked other filmmakers that, and sometimes they just say, don't give up on your dreams and stuff. And it's kind of, it's not really practical advice. It's more like, I don't know, you know, just almost like stock answers to that question. So I appreciate, like, the actual practical advice. I agree as well. Like, I've certainly met filmmakers, not to name any names or anything, but who kind of say, like, well, things will work out once I find a producer to do everything for me. And sometimes people aren't willing to put, like, you know, a lot. When you work in indie film, it's good to wear multiple hats and kind of do multiple things. So yeah, I appreciate that. It was a really awesome answer.
I think it makes you a better filmmaker though too. Like, I was pretty much the post-production supervisor on this show, and I learned so much about VFX because I was working every day with the VFX team. And did we want to have a post-production supervisor? Absolutely. But I'd also wanted to put that money on screen, right? Yeah. So we just rolled up our sleeves to save whatever money we could to keep it in front of the camera. But you learn a lot from that, I think, anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't make mistakes with this show. We made learning opportunities.
That's a good way to look at it. And also, just final question. Kind of 2 questions, but it's also kind of 1 question at the same time. What are your favorite anthology horror TV series that kind of inspired you to make this? And also, I suppose same question. What do you recommend people watch around Halloween time?
So my favorite, the Mount Rushmore is obviously Twilight Zone. I obviously was superly inspired by Black Mirror. I really liked Cabinet of Curiosities as well, the new one on Netflix. But like I grew up on, I don't know if you guys have these programs in the UK, but obviously most people know Goosebumps. We had a show called Freaky Stories when I was a kid, and Are You Afraid of the Dark? And the three of those used to run every night. And John and I felt like tried to make that for adults, like an anthology that was snackable short horror. I feel like anthologies today, a lot of them are an hour and a half. It's like a bundle of films. And we tried to just keep it tight, keep it to 30 minutes, keep it super dark, super fucked up, and make it something that, has a gut punch twist, gets there kind of quickly. And I just felt like that was something I wasn't seeing anymore. I remember growing up with stuff like that. It was geared towards kids, but I hadn't seen it for adults. So we had an audience member, as John said earlier, like describe the show as Goosebumps for adults, and to me that's kind of exactly what we're trying to make.
Yeah, I'm not going to improve the answer that he just gave there. That is perfect. That is a perfect answer. The only other anthology I'd throw in that was like influential would be VHS. The original VHS, I think, changed the way that we think about anthologies as like a culture and society. That was a transformative film. In terms of Halloween viewing, so Trick or Treat is like a must watch. But I think that the weird thing that my wife and I do is we try to like switch it up every Halloween season. We take a look at like the list of like what are like the horror movies that were really good when we were kids that we haven't watched in a while. And we try to start recycling those. So like we just watched House recently from like 1985, which I don't know if I'd recommend that. But like last year we did the original Japanese, like the Ringu, right? Like that holds up like nobody's business. That was amazing. But yeah, just like going back and like looking at like, well, what haven't I watched in a while, and like let's like re-put that back on and like re-interrogate that movie and see if how good it is, how it holds up.
I have a hard time making it through Halloween without going to like Chucky or Mike Myers, like going to Halloween. Like I feel like you have to, like for me anyway, you have to go back to whether it's Jason or Freddy or like whoever you grew up on. One of those makes it in the mix.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, Nightmare on Film Street is, that's a really good answer. That's a great Halloween movie. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. I think that's all we've got time for. But thank you very much, guys, and welcome to Manchester.
Thank you.